Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Awakened Mother Show. This is a very safe, loving room for you to receive. I know you're always giving so much, but this show is really dedicated to moms and dads and people that are so busy doing really good things in the world to have an opportunity to pause and in that spaciousness to receive information and inspiration from these wonderful guests that I have the supreme honor of dialoguing with. And also to have an opportunity for you to just settle. Such a busy time, and everybody's got so much going on in their lives, plus the added pressures of if you're a parent or if you are parenting something or yourself, this opportunity to just rest and receive. And today I have a very special guest with me. Sande Hart is someone that I have known since the birth of the Million Mamas March, which morphed into the Million Mamas movement. So we know each other since 2012. And let me tell you a little bit about Sande. Sande is a mother, grandmother, wife, aunt, and sister from the steep seaside cliffs in Southern California. She is an award-winning leader in the fields of women's empowerment and interfaith community building. She founded the Women's Interfaith Grassroots International Organization, S.A.R.A.H, the Spiritual and Religious Alliance for Hope, of which I was a board member. The morning of 9/11, an instinct to gather women of diverse faiths to protect all that they consider sacred, now in its 19th year. Sande is actively engaged in leadership in the peace, interfaith, compassion, community building, and women's empowerment sectors. Sande serves on the Women's Task Force for the Parliament of the World's Religions and founded and served as director for the international organization, the Charter for Compassion's Women and Girls sector. She served as chair for the United Religions Initiative for North America and is also the founder of Compassionate California, which recently became established into law by the governor's office as the first compassionate state in the world. Sande has conducted countless workshops and produced major and smaller events in more than 7 countries, presented on panels in universities, global and local organizations, and city and state level institutions. Sande is currently being inducted into the Women's Oral History Archives for Claremont Colleges in California. And Sande will barter for chocolate. Help me welcome Sande Hart to the stage. Ah,
Oh, Wendy, hi.
wild. Hi, Sande.
I love that chocolate reference. Yeah, the most important part of my that
Oh,
being a
what kind
grandmother,
of chocolate? Is it white chocolate, dark chocolate, milk chocolate? What's your
milk
fave?
chocolate, hardcore milk chocolate. Yeah, nothing else.
Truffle, almonds. What's
No,
your
I'm just straight up.
straight
Yeah,
up?
yeah.
Nice. Nice. Very nice.
Thank you for asking. That's great investigative reporting, and I appreciate it. So it is on record now. My character. Thank you.
There you go. Well, I like specificity. I love to learn, right? It's that opportunity to really understand the person that I'm sitting with, which is part of the peace building that goes on, is really to determine what the unmet needs are of the person, of the group, and then have conversation about what are the ways that we can meet those needs. What can we do? Because people can't always have what they want, but we can do our best to meet their needs in some way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're exceptional at that, Wendy.
Oh, thank you.
You have insight into a thread that most people can't see down into that root ball of the essence of what that need is, and where that um, where that source is stored.
Thank you. That's very generous of you. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. You should check with my husband about that.
Oh, we've talked.
No, it's all good. I'm holding
Good.
this really beautiful book here, The
Mm,
Liminal Odyssey, which I think is such a beautiful, beautiful book and such a beautiful representation of your journey. So well, I have a couple of questions actually. One is, how are you doing at this particular time in history?
Yeah, it's a really interesting time to be alive, isn't it? Where we
Hmm.
can see all systems breaking down right in front of our eyes, but at the same time, we could see this new, fresh growth coming out of the darkness of the soil. You
Hmm.
know, how many times in civilization can you say that you could witness both things at once? And so for me, remembering that's where we are is really good for my nervous system. Really helps
Yeah.
me regulate. When I start getting pulled in, who could watch television or the news or listen to the news or really be dialed into what's going on in the Middle East or Eastern Europe and not be just devastated by the devastation and man's capacity for, oh, all kinds of degrees of evil. And it's really hard to witness.
Hmm.
Yet we can do that dance between those two worlds of what's coming. All you have to do is have an in-depth conversation with a young person today about what their hopes and vision is for the future.
Hmm.
Quite
Yeah. Thank
insightful.
you.
Mhm.
Thank you. I think that's
I
it's
am.
it's interesting that you say that. I was having a conversation with Michael Beckwith just the other week about that, and I was joking with him that those of us that have a particular perspective, that we've received the information that all of the systems are going to dissolve, that they're dying, but we just weren't given the details. Like we weren't given the details of what it was going to look like. And uh, and it is, my heart is incredibly tender for all that's happening. Oh my gosh, it is just really so. And there's that which we know, and then there's that which we don't know.
Mhm.
And to live in that liminal space,
What it's about.
to be in that space. So, will you say, will you speak to what prompted you to write this book and why you talk about the liminal space, and to tell people, some people may know what that is, but some people may not know. What is it? What is the liminal space?
Well, the word liminal means threshold or the space between here and there. Liminal can be the space between um, a, a dilemma and a choice. It can be the space between a heartbreak and a realization. It can be span the time of a lifetime. It can happen. It can be the space of between moments and breaths. It's just
Mm-hmm.
anytime there's a moment of a demarcation place from here to there, and in that liminal space we have choice. In that liminal space we have agency. So when we can stop and say, "What's going on here?" or "What does that mean?" When we can remember to pause in the spaces in between, or when we're faced with any new information or any new realization, and really examine what's going on, we can really stretch that moment into timelessness, really. And so the idea of writing this book wasn't to write about liminal space. I discovered what liminal space was when, as I'm starting to write this one story that I had been urged by friends to write for about 15 years at the time. And it was an experience that I had at a No Nukes rally and held at the Rose Bowl in 1982 called Peace Sunday. 100,000 people in the Rose Bowl. And it was a No Nukes rally. and there were environmentalists and peace activists. Yoko Ono was there. Mike Farrell were, all of these speakers that were laced in between all these rock bands, all these bands that were relevant since the 60s, really. Even Donovan was there, so maybe even the 50s. And so the day was structured like this. And I'll just tell you a really quick little high-level understanding of what that chapter is about and what that story is about. Is the day was structured like this. It was speaker, band, speaker, band, speaker, band, and it was all that way from 10 o'clock in the morning to about 7 o'clock at night. And early in the day, the MC comes to the microphone and says, hey folks, we just got a report from the parking lot. Somebody left their dog in the car. If that's your dog, please go roll down your windows. It's going to be a very hot day. And there was a low, hush of a boo. And then the band comes out and plays and drowns everyone out. But I didn't forget about the dog. I want to know. I want to know, what about the dog? And we were sitting kind of close to the stage. So I started chanting, what about the dog? Every time there was a breakdown between, speaker and band and speaker, I was chanting, what about the dog? And, it didn't take long before my friends joined me. And then it didn't take long after that before everyone in our section started chanting, what about the dog? And, by about noon, maybe 1 o'clock, the whole stadium was chanting, what about the dog? And that went on all day long. To the point
Wow.
where I didn't even start it. When, anytime there was, nothing going on stage, somebody started the chant, what about the dog?
Great. And what happened to the dog? Did they answer the question?
Well, around right before Mr. Stevie Wonder came to the stage, to ask for 5 minutes of silence for a prayer for peace, the MC came to the microphone and said, so you want to know about the dog? And I just remember everybody started hollering. I remember trash flying in the air. And then she said, the dog is fine.
Oh.
And yeah. And then more trash and more I just remember objects flying in the air. And everyone was very happy about that. And then I don't think he would have gotten his 5 minutes of silence if she didn't answer the big question of the day.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah, and then it wasn't long after that I forgot about it. I forgot about that story until about 15 years later, somebody asked me to tell an interesting story. We were in a group of people, and everybody has a story. What's your story? And I'm like, I don't have a story. I told that story. And that's when somebody heard it, and it has been a friend of mine, and she's been saying, you got to write that book. I don't have enough of a book to write. And then I heard the word liminal, and I started thinking, well, wait a minute. As I'm writing the story, or trying to anyway, I started thinking about that word liminal. I'm like, okay, what was going on inside of you from the moment that message hit your nervous system to the moment you decided to start chanting? What was that about? And okay, well, that was about sacred listening and really listening in. So I wrote about that. And so that's how I was introduced to this word, by truly learning what it meant to me in my life and through this experience. And why liminality is so important, and it's actually becoming part of our lexicon now. You're starting to hear
I've
more.
heard it's so funny because
Yeah.
prior to your book title, I had heard it, but like, sacred text-ish. And then and then after you, I keep hearing it, people using that word much more in the mainstream.
And it's, isn't that interesting? I wonder what that's about, right? Why is it time for us to take liminal space? Because in the time we're in right now requires us to check in with ourselves, right? We're so used to just driving through issues, driving through the way things are. We operate in such a level of assumption. This is the way it is, and it will always be, or it should be this way because why? Consumerism has done a number on us, right? Authoritarian philosophy, systems of domination are so prevalent amongst both men and women.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going
Very
to talk
much.
unless you want to talk about the wounded male and the wounded feminine patriarchy. We don't have to look too far to see that we have been duped by patriarchy's charms. So it's time to reckon with that, but reckon with how I contribute to that. And that takes some sacred listening.
It does. I was having a conversation with another guest on the show, talking about something called the collapsed feminine. That collapse, because there's that embodiment of the divine feminine,
Mm.
and then there's the collapsed feminine, the one who's like things that I can think of, like apologizing, not having good boundaries, not asking for what you want, expecting people to mind read, all these, having expectations, all these ways in which that collapsed feminine operates, waiting for someone or something to rescue, blaming. Now that's not, that goes across the board. Our society is based, it's like the structure is based on blame, shame, make wrong. No, it's not me, it's you. No, not me, it's them. I don't have any, I'm a victim,
I was just going to add victim.
right? It's like we could think of them as the four horsemen, blame, shame, make wrong, and victim. And the antidote is self responsibility, boundaries or limits, vision, and interconnectedness. Like we're all interconnected. And so when I think of liminal space, what the words that come to mind that I love are the being and the becoming.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That living in that space of how fascinating that you at the concert, there was a something that downloaded into your awareness that compelled you to shout that out. And that spoke to somebody else who was there, and it compelled them. And so it becomes that wave. And it's so fascinating because we think about the fact that each and all of us has I believe, has a mission. We're here on purpose with purpose, and we have a mission on our hearts, right? Our souls communicate through our hearts. And so something moved across your heart, and you took that action. I'm saying that because Sandy's last name is Hart. Even though it's not there, it's something moved across her heart. So when we honor that for the highest and the greatest good of each and all of us, then that collapsed feminine, and we see that, it's just like racism or internalized racism or anti-Semitism and internalized anti-Semitism that occurs. We see this. It's evident in people, and we in that liminal space, we get to step away.
Mm-hmm.
We get to turn within and tap into that space within, so we can go forth and honor the call on our soul.
So beautifully put. And what happens when we are in that condition that you so beautifully described, we raise our vibration,
Oh,
which
yeah.
raises the vibration on the planet. I had an experience recently. Now, I've been talking about this book for a couple of years. I spent about a year, it kind of flew out of me. And by the way, it's not just that one story, there are 11 more
I
stories.
know.
And then each one of those stories are anchored in a different kind of skill. Because I said, okay, well, what made that?
Grandmothers, I love the grandmother's wisdom and the sacred cultivating of synchronicities.
Oh, well, so all of these things are so important for us to practice. Now, I've been practicing these things not just because I'm conditioned through writing it, but because I think, okay, I'm now the poster child for everything I said here. I've got to live it, or my kids are going to call me out, right?
And
And
they do.
so, and they do. It was, oh boy, one of my kids does really well, and I love it. I appreciate it. I require it, even though sometimes it's like, really? But I have to say, okay, if she's going to say it to me, I have to listen hard here because she loves me.
Yeah.
And so practice, we do have to practice this because there, this information, of course, is wonderful, but when we practice self-realization through practical skills, through repetition, through, and I learned from you, creating a habit, the 21,
Oh,
what was your program called? 21 days.
to rock that one was 21 days to rock your mama self.
Yeah, and I rock my mama self
Yes,
because
me too.
I really practice some things that just kick in. So you don't even have to think about what happens when you're in a liminal space because your system isn't like taking control. You have created a habit of how you're going to respond and think about something. And I found myself in this environment at the Parliament of the World's Religions recently, and this one was in Chicago in last August. And I found myself in a condition where I was witnessing some behavior that really surprised me, where I was like, what's that about? Where any other time I would have gotten really judgy, I would have gotten maybe even, I would have victimized. I would have done all those things, they, and me. And when I'm pointing to me, I mean me, the victim. Instead, I'm just watching with awe and wonder because I'm thinking that's their story. It's not mine. But I honestly felt like I was walking this far off the ground the entire week I was in Chicago. And that's because of all this practice that I had done for now a few years of this stuff. So it works. It really works. And I put myself in the petri dish because I'm one heavy subject. and
Ah,
and my vibration drops. It did yesterday. I was a hot mess, but rebounding is much quicker. So, and a lot of the stuff I've learned from you, I listen to, I love stream with Rabbi Michael.
yeah.
Um, that high vibration information, make that a habit because it
Yes.
matters. And also, it's our responsibility and our privilege to be alive at this time. It's
Yeah.
a fascinating time to be alive.
It's extraordinary. And I love what you're saying because one of the things that I remember I learned from my Reverend Michael was that choice is a function of heightened awareness,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, and it's ironic because I remember when my daughter was really young and she went to this wonderful, wonderful kids school, and she really wanted to learn Spanish and Japanese. And she would tell me this all the time. And I would tell them at the school, and they would say, well, she's got to bring it to us. And we've got to have a certain amount of people because we don't, certain amount of kids that have to agree. And they went through this whole thing. And I would say to them, I would say, well, here's the thing. I said, it's like a buffet. If they don't know that this is on the menu, they're not going to choose it. So from a higher heightened place of awareness, your awareness, when you live in a small world of us and them, blame, shame, make wrong, victim, 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 that's the lens through which you're viewing everything, every situation, every comment, every interaction. It's that place. But when you raise up, like you're talking about, and you know what, Sandy? It's not how many times you fall, it's how many times you pick yourself up and start again. Because we all have these ideals of how we want to mother, how we want to live, how we want to lead, how we want to be. And then shizzle happens. And we're like, oh my God, okay, what's my practice? And that is where we have the choice, right? We have dominion. We are the only mammals that have dominion over our thoughts and our actions. not like the first thought that might come to us. So what you're saying is so powerful.
Yeah, and one of the I have a chapter on forgiveness and grace.
You do.
God, and because I have to read it every now and then, and to your point, practice forgiveness for falling down. Practice forgiveness for losing your grace. Practice forgiveness for,
I'm looking at
'cause
your book.
we
Yes.
add to that. We're that's that little victim devil on our shoulder, making ourselves a victim again. Because it's bad enough that we lost it. Now we're dealing with that. We pull ourselves up, but now forgive ourselves, and then let that be let that be a part of who you are. The concept that people struggle with is that forgiveness and forgetting. Of course you're not going to forget. I don't want to forget. I don't. I
Mm.
want to, like, honor that, even the and not just what I've afflicted upon myself, but perhaps someone who has hurt me, or an experience that really devastated me for one reason or another. Um, it makes up all of my beautiful parts,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that that is probably one of for me, I return to that reminding regularly.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Love that.
okay, this is okay. And don't beat yourself up about that. And every time I catch my liminal conscious trying to go there, I'm like, not today, Satan.
Get thee behind me. Right? It's interesting because what I think about is self-love and self-compassion and self-appreciation, which, depending on how you've been brought up and the influences on your life, for some people that's very easy to reach for. And for some people it's much more of an effort, but it doesn't mean you don't do it. It means it's part of your practice. It's like your dharma is to have self-love, to self-compassion, because if we don't have self-love and appreciation for ourselves, there's not very much we're going to accomplish. And I'm not talking about being a Nobel Peace Prize um, winner, right, or a Nobel laureate. It's not it, but it's about getting up and out of your bed without self-love and appreciation, without that feeling of like, oh, another day is before me, rather than, oh my God, I screwed up so badly yesterday. Why am I even getting out of bed? I mean, it's that being so hard on yourself. And I like, whenever there's a situation where it might feel a little crunchy. I know it's like the sandpaper on the pearl. I always think about, what is this here to teach me?
Yeah.
What is this here to teach me? Because I know that I live in a friendly universe, in spite and despite of what the corporate media wants us to know, with everything going on around the world, like the voice of doom and gloom. And there are really serious things that are happening around the world. So, not dismissing or denying what is showing up,
Mhm.
but going back to, what am I here for? What is this here to teach me? What am I to learn from this? How may I be a beneficial presence, a source for a transformed world?
Yeah.
What is mine to do?
What is mine to do? That's that boils everything down to responsibility and privilege.
Mm-hmm.
What is mine to do? Where do your passions meet the needs of the world? When you show up there, you
Right.
are beautifying the world. I learned this from Connie Baxter Marlowe and Andrew Cameron Bailey, the authors of The Trust Frequency.
Mm.
Oh, talk about, I've got full body just mentioning their names. And I learned this from them, and it's a term I'd never heard before: enlightened self-interest,
Mm-hmm.
right? And perhaps, that when you're living your authentic, highest potential self, the possibilities, of course, are phantasmical. If Is that a word? Yeah.
Let's take it.
I'm
Let's
sorry.
make it a new word.
Oh, it is. And that, let's talk about new language. So, and words are so important. It's energy that we're putting out. So be careful. Like you said, um, how our self-talk too. Take the
Oh,
word
yeah,
just, J-U-S-T, out of your language. Unless you're talking about justice,
that's right. Just us. Yeah.
because it's a muscle you can build that you'll start noticing other things. But yeah, so thank you for saying that. Um, and that's really essential because it just brings us back to self-realization, which is
Mhm.
what this is really all about. And questioning assumptions about, is this really serving me? Is this serving
Mhm.
you? And enlightened self-interest is when I serve myself in my highest sense, I'm serving you. And when I'm serving you in the best way I can, I'm serving me. It's really
Yeah.
a beautiful way of being.
Yes. And because it's about service, about generosity, there's a different vibratory frequency to someone who is interested, like yourself, in serving. And how may I be generous? How may I serve? And there is a difference between service and servitude, just like there is a huge difference between humility and humiliation. Very big difference.
Yeah.
And to me, something that is very near and dear to my heart, I actually wrote about it for my ministerial thesis, is the intersection of the mystical and the sacred activism, because it's not separate, but it depends on where you're coming from as you're doing your work.
I would love to read your thesis. And and I just, I was woken up in the theta stage
Mm,
yesterday morning at 4 o'clock in the morning with these three words. And I got up and I journaled about it. From intersectionality,
uh-huh.
convergence.
Emergence, you said?
Convergence.
Convergence.
So
Ooh.
instead of this, it's
Yep. Exactly. That's exactly.
yeah.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that, and I'm glad that you mentioned that. So may I read your thesis? We published it, please. Or yeah.
Oh, my thesis. Oh, yeah. Well, thank you. I'm still finishing my other book, so we'll see what happens with the thesis. But it's something that very near and dear to my heart because I also think about the role of the mother, and
Mhm.
and I want to be really clear for anyone who's listening to this. I am not excluding the father. I'm not, because I believe that that consciousness is so important to the development of a child. So I want to be really clear that it's about both, and I'm speaking from the lens of the archetypal mother, the one that holds that fierce compassion, the one that holds that space, who goes forward and protects her babies. You do not come between a mama and protecting her babies.
Mhm.
So at this particular time when we're doing all the pulling the hood off of patriarchy, we want to look to see where do we have internalized patriarchy and all these labels. And it's like, how can you live a life of enlightenment, to be an awakened being?
That's so important. And it's such a great question. I've been having a lot of conversations on the future of women's leadership, and we
Mm-hmm.
talked maybe a little bit about that. And, we as the embodied woman have been trying to rewire the system, the very system that has created the scaffolding, right? We're trying to re-drywall. And I had this conversation with a young woman who put it just so bluntly. She goes, why are we trying to Why are we trying to do that? We need just a whole nother system.
Mhm.
And I'm immediately, as she was talking, I saw those scaffolding just kind of fall away, and then everything turns horizontal, and it's not even structural. It's maybe spiral, maybe it reflects, looks like the cosmos with different things flowing in different directions. We don't know where we are going, but we know we're on our way. That's the liminal space, right? We're in between this structure and this structure.
Mhm.
Right? We need order. We need some kind of structure as humanity right now. We're not saying that those structures aren't important and that those don't need rewiring. But how do we do that while holding the vision for this other place at the same time and moving there? And we do that in that higher vibration naturally. And I don't know how long it'll take to get to this new system. And we don't even have a language for it. And the best that we can do, especially with the crises and the pain, and nobody's immune from that, right? That's going on
Mhm.
around the world, and anything, whether it's in Israel and Palestine or whether it's in your own home, no one
Congo.
is immune.
Yeah.
It's heavy, and the mothers are standing up because this is our biological imperative to respond to our children who are the world, and not forget our connection to Mother Earth too.
Yes.
And take
Yeah.
cues from her and honor
Yeah.
and love her. And that's all we can do, the best we can do right now. And what a great service it is.
Yes. It's so true. It's really true. I love that you're talking about leadership and the feminine leadership, the feminine aspect of the leadership as a directional to
Mhm.
move from where we are. And I personally, I think reforming the structures would be really um, backwards to do that because the structures as such are created to have what's happening. So it's really about the visionaries. It's about the luminaries, the visionaries catching the new vision and having that scaffolding. And I feel like that scaffolding is energetic and that it really starts with the highest frequency, which is love.
Uh-huh.
Because I've had people say things to me. I have this weekly prayer circle, and I'm usually the one at rallies and at events and town halls, and I somehow I end up praying, doing the way that I pray, that I learned at Agape, and I've had people say things like, "Oh, that's soft," and I'm thinking, soft. It takes so well, first of all, I think prayer works all the time. So that I don't even, that's not even a consideration. And love is the most fierce force that exists in all dimensions of time and space. That's how this whole world came to be, out of love, birthed out of love. And so to aspire to embody that and to spread that wherever you go, like that's, to me, that's one of the structures. And also compassion. But we must have unity. We may not agree. Chances are we won't agree on some things, but there must be an agreement to agree on certain things like the sanctity of life, the sanctity of freedom of choice, of having agency over your body and your children's bodies, like justice. Like these to me are energetics that are wanting to be put in place. And I know people talk about, oh, well, in the 5D, none of this exists. Well, right now we are in the 3D and we are seeding, we drop the seeds vibrationally, like the liminal odyssey.
Thank you.
We are planting the seeds so that this blossoms. And I often think of Martin Luther King Jr. when he say, I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I know we'll get there. And I think about that a lot, multiple times during the day. I may not get there with you, but I know it exists. I've seen it. I know it's possible.
We need hope, and therein lies hope.
Mm-hmm.
You and I both know Chief Phil Lane Jr.,
Yes.
hereditary Chief Phil Lane.
Yes.
And he taught me, we were at Agape, actually.
I think that we were there together.
We were there together for the shift of the ages, for the Mayan prophecy in 2012, September
Yes.
21st.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spent the night. Some people spent the night, remember? And I turned to him and I said, when's it going to start? And he goes, and he big old belly laugh, and he goes, oh, it's going to get worse before it gets better. And I'm like, oh, yikes. And to that, he said, no, it's good. It's a sign of resistance. And if we're not seeing resistance right now,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to, from, our political or national, mostly political and nationalism, but everything we're witnessing right now that is, the system that's falling apart is just resistance. It's just proof that we're getting closer to that vision, Dr. King's vision.
Yeah.
That should bring us all hope.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, will you share with people about the lectures that you've mentioned and then how they can connect with you and get your book and work with you?
Oh, the Liminal Odyssey is at liminalodyssey.com. That's a clunky word. As a matter of fact, I have to say, when I set out to write this book, when I first heard the work, I couldn't say the word liminal. I got the M and the N. What's that word? And so, yeah, liminalodyssey.com, or you can just Google Sande Hart, just spell my name right, and SANDEHART. That'll get you eventually there. And lectures. I'm having conversations. I'm there for my research, for my curiosity. Like,
Mm-hmm.
where's that sweet spot? What are we missing? We talk like this all the time. We have all these conversations. Where are we missing the mark? What aren't we seeing? What are we walking through with blinders on? And I'm talking to women across all sectors. It's going to be another book. But I'm talking to women of all ages across all sectors: education, healthcare, government, of course, grassroots, spirituality, women, I know from the women's prison, all the women I know that are in some form of leadership. And it's fascinating. I'm not hearing the same two things, and I'm hearing things I've never heard before. And I've had about 20 conversations thus far, and I'll probably have about 20 more. And Wendy, you and I are going to have a big conversation. I can't wait. So, yeah. So that's kind of cooking. There's a book,
Right.
but those are, I think, what you mean by lectures. Yeah.
That's what I meant. The
Conversations.
Not lectures, but that's what came out of my brain in the moment. Those lectures.
They're listening sessions.
I love that, listening.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Fascinating. Yeah.
We learn so much by listening to each other.
Mm-hmm. If all you do is read about the sacred art of listening from my book, from that chapter, or just Google, what you can find on listening, there's an entire global industry on listening. Their conferences get like 10,000 people. I mean, it's like, really? We think we understand what it means to listen. And it's not hard.
It's so fascinating because I know as part of my training as a practitioner and minister, and also when I went through that very rigorous program to be trauma, certified, and all the work that I did in the nonviolent community that I applied to parenting and reparenting oneself, there was a lot of the nonviolent communication that Marshall Rosenberg talks about, because it is fascinating to me how people hear things. We could say one thing, And depending on the prism of a person's consciousness, they receive something that hasn't been communicated. And it's fascinating how that happens. It's almost like that game of telephone. Like you say, and then by the time it gets to the last person, it's like, and you're like, wait, no, I said, so it's sacred listening, the art of sacred listening, the art of listening. Well, first of all, listening to spirit. First of all, taking designated time to literally listen to spirit, and then having ears to hear, right? The ears to hear what isn't audible, but then sitting in front of somebody and listening. And that's an art.
It is a sacred art. Listening in and listening out is same technique, different mechanism, and also applying the liminal space into what you've heard before. It's the sweet spot before the judgment, before the assumption of what was meant,
Right.
and assuming the best.
Yes.
Just assume it was the better side of what you think you might have heard, you know?
Yes. Oh, I love that reminder.
Well, my husband reminds me of that all the time, because if you're married or have children or have a domestic partner or what have you, if you're in a tight relationship with somebody, you know exactly what Wendy means, right? How many times have, it's something come back at you and it's like, whoa.
Oh, I know. It's so interesting because, like you're saying, when you're in relationship with someone and you say something and then they say something and then you're like, I really want you to understand what I'm saying. And then, no, I really want you to, and no one's listening. Then all of a sudden the capacity. So what you're saying is so true. Listening in, listening out. Thank you, Sandy.
Oh, Wendy. Can we go another hour?
I know, right? We could.
You and I
we could easily do that for sure.
Thank you.
I so appreciate you and thank you for being here with us today and for this beautiful book that you've written. Everybody, I'm going to show it to you again.
Thank you so much.
All of the contact information will be in the show notes, so people can go to purchase the book and be with you and be part of the conversations.
Thank you.
And
oh yeah, it's on Audible too.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
On Audible as well. I should mention that.
Well, keep doing the work that you're doing, Sande Hart, with so much heart.
Thank you. I don't have a choice. I'm here, and I have models like you and friends like you and angels that are pulling me and prodding me and from behind. I don't have much of a choice. I'm like, I'm going. Okay.
Many years ago, I remember a ministerial colleague of mine. I mean, I love this. She's like, Spirit's such a nag.
All right already. All right already.
I got it. All right, I hear you. Okay. All right, got it. So, but I just love it. And she was kidding, but it was so funny.
I love it.
There's truth in that, because when you say yes to Spirit, when you say yes, use me, it's not like, oh, here's the fine print, but don't use me this way. It's like, I've surrendered my life to being of service to the highest and the greatest good of each and all of us. So use me. And there you go.
Well, you're being used so well, Wendy.
You are so gracious. Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you. Thank you for this. I love you, and I love being here with you. Thank you so much for your generosity of heart, and your praying is fierce. Listen in. Maybe they just meant it. Just touch them in such a tender way. Let's assume the best of that soft comment. Yeah.
I love that. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Thank you. I'm just going to close the show. So thank you for being here. Don't go away. So everyone, you have had a most magical, mystical treat, a deep dive into the liminal space within you, I invite you to continue to pause, to be in this space between the being and the becoming, that liminal space, and to remember that you have dominion over what you allow to live in your thoughts and the choices you make. So go forth and remember these three things. You are powerful beyond measure, loved beyond description, and a force for good in the world. So go forth and spread your magic. Share about the Awakened Mother Show. Invite your friends and your family. Be with us. And if there's something that I can do to support you, I'll make sure you have a way to reach me. And just keep showing up. Just keep showing up. And thank you. Thank you. When I say keep showing up for yourself. Keep showing up for the miracles. And don't give up. All right? We'll see you soon. Bye for now.